All right, we're about to go live right now. How everybody doing? Stephen Jackson, JWTV. We had the recent UFO disclosure, but also people still ask questions like, what about Area 51? What about, the other unknown situations that's going on right now? And today we got Professor Kane coming on, who he's been pretty much, how long you said you've been teaching?
I've been teaching college since 1976, and I teach a class on the paranormal that I've been doing for 8 years. So,
And you got into this UFO disclosure. And, with Nick Pope saying that with everything they found, they would not give us actual information that they found something out there. How does that make you feel? And what do you have you came up with in your classes and your research that you've been following over the time of years?
right, the recent disclosure event, it took place on December 16th. The New York Times published, an article about it and put video in there with it that you can access on the webpage. And, at first some people said, well, this is full disclosure. And I never thought it was full disclosure. I think what it is confirmation. The context of it is important. If you think about it, ufology people have been, the whole community of UFO community has been screaming for the government to tell us anything for about 70 years, since 1947, Roswell and some other sightings back then. And we finally got a little something, a tiny bit, and it is a released video that was authorized by the Department of Defense. So it is the first time in 70 years that the United States government has released video of a UFO and, said that UFOs are real. So it's not, they didn't say, well, there's aliens flying them. Nobody said it was ETs. The video itself is kind of grainy and it's hard to see the object. But I do think it's important, it's a significant event. Right after the release of the video, Stephen, there was pushback from some parts of the UFO community. So right now there are kind of two camps. One camp thinks it's solid confirmation. I'm in that camp. I think it's real video. It's genuine as far as I can tell, and as far as experts have been able to tell. And there's another group, mainly led by Daniel List, the dark journalist, who say that it's all fake. It's just Tom DeLonge trying to get money and so forth. I think that's misguided. It was a solid effort by DeLonge, and he has this whole team, of very impressive scientists. Some of them I can tell you about. I even know one of them.
So what? So what about Tom DeLonge? Like I said, a lot of people think he's a wacky guy, and some people say that he has real reasoning behind this UFO situation being exposed. What would you say about Tom DeLonge? Because really, I'm kind of on the fence about DeLonge right now. I actually don't study much about him, so that's why I want to get your intake on the situation.
Well, he's a very interesting character. Here's something. He was the guitarist and the frontman for a sort of late punk group called Blink 182. All my students at college know Blink 182 and like them. But he doesn't have any experience with UFOs. He hasn't been working in the field for more than a few years. So people said, well, why would the government be telling Tom DeLonge, of all people, all this stuff? And the theory that I go with is that they got DeLonge because he has a public. If you look at his Facebook page, it's got 30 million people or something on YouTube channels. He has millions of followers. So I think what he has done is he's provided a platform for the government to release a little bit of information to us. The theory, Stephen, is that there are two factions inside the Pentagon on UFOs. The one faction wants to tell the public and has wanted to for the last 15, 20 years. And periodically they get in a fight. The other faction doesn't want to tell the public. So this is what happened recently on the 16th, I think, is the faction that wants to disclose information won a little bit. They got Tom DeLonge, who has a platform. You know, he's got a lot of followers. He's a recognizable face, and they used him to get people to pay attention, and then trotted out their team of scientists and intelligence analysts and so on. And you know, the fight will go on in the Pentagon. I mean, I think I go with the you know, if you listen to say Richard Dolan, historian of UFOs. You know, he says that there's been these two factions forever. And, you know, who's going to win out? Well, right now, it looks like the disclosure faction is winning. We got some actual solid information, but DeLong hasn't done anything spectacular as far as analysis or anything like that.
Yeah.
What he's done is set up a platform and a company.
And I would agree with you.
Not Tom DeLong. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's fine. I would agree with you on that, but you know, something that's really strange. You know, they released a disclosure, and everybody was, you know, some people felt like a kid with a new toy, but it was just a question that people didn't ask, and that we're asking kind of right now. The government did admit they, you know, study UFOs, you know, but what about all the Area 51 situations that hasn't been disclosed yet? What about that? Because that's really something we need to know about if they're already giving up information that they've been studying these UFOs.
Spot on. You got it exactly. Area 51. If your viewers want to read a really good book about Area 51, there's one by a woman named Annie Jacobson, and it's just called Area 51. It's really good. She goes and really explores the whole history of it carefully. I just finished it myself a couple of months ago, and you know, her point is that Area 51 is not one place. It's several different base camps, right? So there's one part of it that is basically just testing advanced airplanes for the government. You know, fighter jets. The U-2 plane was developed there. Various spy jets were developed there. And then there are these other parts of it. One part is called S4, the S4 area, and that is the part that is, you know, reported to have possibly actual UFO discs there. Back in 1989, there was a guy named Bob Lazar. Your viewers, if they're into UFOs, may have heard of him. And he came out on TV. He was interviewed by a UFO expert named George Knapp, who I can talk about a little bit later. And George Knapp got him to talk, and Lazar had worked at Area 51 for a time, about 6 months, I think, not very long. But during the time he worked there, he said, I was working on a captured, crashed UFO disc and trying to figure out the propulsion system. He went public with this, and it was interesting what happened after that.
And they erased his information from the database because he was a whistleblower.
Right. Lazar was a major whistleblower. And the thing is, the odd thing about Bob Lazar, you know, his credibility at first was attacked because he said he had a degree from MIT and he had worked at Lawrence Livermore Laboratory. They checked into it, and no records exist of him having a degree from, you know, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. But the thing is about him is that the government, after he went public, they harassed him, right? They parked cars outside his house, they pulled him over, they did all these things. And their response is something of an indication that there was something to it. You know what I mean? Like if he was really nobody, they would have ignored him, but they didn't. He was harassed like crazy. He also has not sought out publicity. Lazar he didn't agree to any interviews for about 20 years after the first one. And he's only recently come out and done a couple of interviews. So he's not a show-off, but he's not after celebrity or money. He has his own company. But there are questions about his background. Some people, like, I'll tell you, Stanton Friedman, who's a well-known. Stanton Friedman was looking at UFOs before I was. I mean, I think I told you when we were chatting, I've been looking at UFOs for 50 years. And he doesn't like Bob Lazar and thinks he's fake. So there are two schools of thought on Bob Lazar.
But I really believed him just because of all the information he had. He came across as a legitimate guy, and like you said, they gave him a lot of attention. But also, I remember you was talking. I got these kitty cats fighting down here. But anyway, I remember you was talking about Bigfoot, and you said that maybe Bigfoot could have been linked to UFOs. I mean, we know that the government pretty much hides everything, and even their studies has proven that it's industry studies, and it's not the actual data. So, what would you say about this whole situation with Bigfoot and
Well,
UFOs?
Bigfoot, yeah. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Um, Bigfoot you have to look back at the work of this really famous paranormal writer named John Keel, K-E-E-L, John Keel. He wrote numerous books. One of them is called Our Haunted Planet, and in that one, he talks extensively about the fact that whenever there's a bunch of UFO sightings in an area, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, there are often numerous Bigfoot sightings and paranormal things like poltergeist, ghosts appearing and things like that. So Keel's theory was that Bigfoot and the UFOs are somehow connected. Later on, if you've ever heard of Skinwalker Ranch, this was a place where, again, George Knapp was involved. It was a place that they thought that creatures were coming into our dimension through portals at the time. They actually saw a couple of them happen. Wow. There were scientists there. By a guy who's now connected with Tom DeLonge. There's all a big web here. See?
Where was this from? You said they seen these things coming into our dimension?
Yes, there were actual scientists. They were in a group called the National Institute for Discovery Science. They bought this ranch, which is in Utah, in the Uinta Basin in Utah. They bought the ranch because there have been so many reports of UFOs, creatures, etc. And they sent a science team out there. They were there for 4 years, and they saw all kinds of wild and crazy stuff, especially cattle mutilations, poltergeists in the buildings, lots of different UFOs of different shapes, orbs of various kinds. And one night, 2 of the scientists were watching an orb, and it opened up, turned into a portal, and a Bigfoot-like creature crawled out of it.
Wow.
Now, they didn't get filmed. Their cameras didn't work. And Bigfoot's famous for this. Whenever you try to take a picture of Bigfoot, the camera dies. The batteries are dead. So
that's
it's
crazy.
really hard. Yeah, that's why there's so few pictures of them. So.
That's crazy. Like I haven't heard that one before, but I know with all your research and study, you said 8 years you've been doing your paranormal class, and you said about 50 years you've been studying UFOs, right?
Yep. I started when I was 14. I haven't ever looked back. I've always been interested in it. I didn't start the class until I got tenure. So, because you're at a university, if you're teaching about UFOs, and then you go for tenure, you might not get it. People will go with it. But once I had tenure, I started teaching a class on it. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to even get this information from you, and I'm glad that you came on to pretty much give us a little bit more insight today. And this is very, very important information and different information that I have not heard. And coming from somebody of your credentials, it's very great to have you come on. I really appreciate you. And I want to ask you, if there's any other thing that you want to say before we close out this live stream today.
I'll give your viewers a tip here. I'm sort of teaching my class here as I talk to you. There are 3, as far as DeLonge and disclosure goes, because this is the happening thing. If you want to know up to date what's going on, right, you want to follow people on YouTube, here are some people to follow. Richard Dolan, Grant Cameron, Linda Moulton Howe, and George Knapp, K-N-A-P-P. Those 4 people are on it, and they're very reliable. They're conservative. They're not wild, crazy, going off the deep end with it. They're not super fans of DeLonge. Neither are they against the information. They think it's genuine and significant. None of them thinks it's the end, right? There's going to be more. So those 4 people I would recommend to your viewers.
All right. And definitely everybody should check those out, because we're all out here searching for answers, and we all want to know what they don't want to tell us. So,
Me too.
Exactly. So it was great having you on, and Professor Kane is actually subscribed to this channel. Of course, I won't give you his name, his subscriber name, because you'll be blowing him up. But I appreciate it, and I'm glad to have everybody joining in on this channel, and everybody who tunes in every single day. thank you, Professor Kane, for tuning in and giving this interview today. And thanks. We'll have more coming today. Stephen Jackson, JWTV, thanks for tuning in. Subscribe, click the bell, and I'll be back for more.
My pleasure.